A long time ago, people didn't know that there were creatures smarter than humans who were watching and studying our world. These creatures were watching us very closely, like when someone looks at tiny creatures in a drop of water with a microscope. Let me tell you about Mars. Mars is a planet that goes around the Sun, and it's about 140 million miles away from the Sun. The Sun gives Mars only half as much light and heat as it gives our world. Scientists think that Mars is older than our world because of how it formed. It's also much smaller than our world, which means it cooled down faster and life could start earlier. Mars has air and water, which are important for living things to survive. People used to think that they were the only intelligent life in the universe, and they didn't consider the idea that there might be other intelligent life on Mars. They didn't understand that Mars is older than our planet and smaller, which means it has been around for a longer time and is closer to the end of its life. Our planet will eventually become colder, and the same thing has already happened to Mars, our neighboring planet. We don't know a lot about Mars, but we do know that it is much colder than Earth, even at the equator. Mars has less air and its oceans are much smaller, only covering a third of the planet's surface. Huge snowcaps form and melt at the poles, causing floods in other parts of the planet. The Martians are facing the problem of their planet getting too cold and becoming exhausted. This problem has forced them to become smarter and stronger. They have special tools to look at our planet, which is 35 million miles away from them, and they see hope. Our planet has warmer weather, plants, and oceans. It has clouds that show it is fertile, and we can see big areas of land with many people and lots of water. To the creatures on Mars, we humans are just as different and unimportant as monkeys and lemurs are to us. Like us, they believe that life is a constant fight for survival. Their planet is getting colder and colder, and they only see inferior animals on our planet. They feel that their only way to survive is to fight against us. But before we judge them too harshly, we must remember the terrible things that our own species has done. We have destroyed many animals and even entire groups of people. For example, European immigrants wiped out the Tasmanians in just 50 years. If the Martians fight in the same way, we have no right to complain. The Martians are very smart and have planned their attack very carefully. They are much better at math than we are. They have been preparing for a long time. And people like Schiaparelli saw that Mars was changing, but didn't understand what it meant. All this time, the Martians were getting ready to fight. In 1894, a bright light was seen on Mars by many astronomers. The first people to see it were at Lick Observatory, and then people in Nice and other places saw it too. The news was reported in Nature magazine on August 2nd. Some people thought that the light might have been a big gun shooting at Earth from Mars. Strange marks were also seen near where the light came from during the next 2 times Mars was close to Earth. 6 years ago, a big event happened on Mars. Level of Java told other astronomers that there was a huge burst of gas on the planet. It happened around midnight on the 12th of the month. The gas was mostly hydrogen and was moving very fast towards Earth. Level thought it looked like fire coming out of a gun. However, the news was not reported much in the newspapers, so many people did not know about the danger. The speaker only found out about it because they talked to Ogilvy, a famous astronomer, who invited them to look at Mars with him that night. Even though a lot has happened since then, I still have a very clear memory of that night watch. It was very dark and quiet where we were, with a small lantern casting a weak light in the corner and a telescope ticking steadily in the background. There was a narrow opening in the roof where we could see the stars. Ogilvy was moving around, but we couldn't see him. When we looked through the telescope, we saw a deep blue circle with a small, round planet moving in it. The planet looked very small, but it was actually quite far away from us, more than 40 million miles. It was marked with faint stripes and was slightly flattened at the top and bottom. It looked like it was shaking, but that was just the telescope moving. As I watched, the planet seemed to get bigger and smaller and move closer and farther away, but that was just my eyes getting tired. It's hard to imagine how much empty space there is in the universe, where everything is just dust and particles. I remember seeing 3 faint stars in the sky near the planet we were observing through the telescope. They looked very distant and small, and the space around them was completely dark. You know how dark the night sky can be on a cold, clear night, but through the telescope, it looks even darker and more mysterious. Suddenly, I saw something flying towards us through space, getting closer and closer every minute. It was the object they had sent to Earth, the thing that would cause so much chaos, struggle, and death. I had no idea what it was at the time, and no one on Earth could have predicted the danger it posed. As we watched, there was also a burst of gas coming from the planet, a red flash at the edge. It happened just as the clock struck midnight, and I told Ogilvy so he could take a look. The night was warm, and I was feeling thirsty, so I stumbled clumsily in the dark to get to the little table where the siphon was. Ogilvy was amazed by the gas stream that was coming towards us. On that evening, another missile that couldn't be seen was sent from Mars towards Earth. It happened just a little less than 24 hours after the first missile. I remember sitting in the dark, with colors of green and red appearing before my eyes. I wanted a light so I could smoke, without realizing the significance of the small glimmer I had noticed. Ogilvy watched until 1 in the morning but then gave up. We used a lantern to walk to his house. Down below us in the darkness were the towns of Ottershaw and Chertsey, along with their many residents who were sleeping peacefully. That night, he was very curious about the state of Mars. He didn't believe the common idea that there were creatures on Mars trying to signal us. Instead, he thought that it was possible that there was a heavy rain of meteorites falling on the planet, or that a giant volcano had erupted. He explained to me how it was unlikely that the two neighboring planets had evolved in the same way. He said that the likelihood of anything resembling a human on Mars was extremely low, around 1 in a million. On the night of the missile launch, many people saw a flame in the sky around midnight, and it continued for 10 nights. However, after the 10th night, the shots suddenly stopped and no one knows why. Some people believe that the gases released during the firing may have caused trouble for the Martians. Dense clouds of smoke and dust spread through the planet's atmosphere, blocking familiar features that were normally visible through telescopes on Earth. Eventually, even the daily newspapers began reporting on the strange events, with many articles discussing the possibility of volcanoes on Mars. The satirical magazine, Punch, even created a cartoon about it. However, people still went about their daily lives, seemingly oblivious to the danger that the missiles posed. For example, Markham was thrilled to have obtained a new photograph of Mars for the illustrated paper he edited. During this time, the newspapers of the 19th century were known for their abundance and quality of reporting. Meanwhile, the author was preoccupied with learning how to ride a bicycle and was also working on a series of papers discussing the moral ideas that might develop as civilization progressed. One night, when the first missile was still about 10 million miles away, I went for a walk with my wife. The stars were shining brightly and I took the opportunity to explain to her about the signs of the zodiac. I also pointed out Mars, a bright light in the sky that many telescopes were focused on. It was a warm evening, and as we returned home, we encountered a group of travelers from Chertsey or Isleworth who were singing and playing music. We could see lights in the upper windows of the houses as people settled in for the night. In the distance, we could hear the sounds of trains being shunted at the railway station, the noises ringing and rumbling softly like a melody in the distance. My wife pointed out the colorful signal lights hanging in a framework against the sky. Everything seemed so peaceful and safe.